This is going to be a quick introduction to the webpack public path and the changes that were necessary in order for Ensemble to be deployable to subdirectories without a lot of manual intervention. So we're working in this default webpack config here. And we're going to work with this image and font rule. This is using the file loader module of webpack, which takes references to certain types of files that we've identified, PNGs, TTFs, etc., and puts them all in one location. And the reason you want to do that is so that if you're referencing them from multiple places, that the browser can cache them appropriately. So what happens here in this file loader? So we're going to start with output path. And what output path says is that for these types of files, basically when we encounter them, just put them all in this directory. And this directory is relative to our file structure. So webpack right now is set to run in the seed directory, and webpack's output path is public/build. So this is the output path right here, build. And this file loader is going to tack on UI assets file loader. So it's going to tack on UI assets file loader. And then in here, we're going to find all of those files, TTFs, PNGs, etc. So how does this manifest? So we're going to start up Ensemble and we're going to see what actually happens when we try to reference one of these files here. So Ensemble starts. And we're going to look inside the toolbar. So here you can see that our magnifying glass is not showing up appropriately, and we'll soon see why. So if we come in here, we look in our styles at Font Finance. Here we can see the URL of the TTF is /UIassets/fileloader/fontfinance.ttf. And that is exactly what we would expect, /UIassets/fileloader/TTF. The only problem is that our document root is up at public, not at build, right? Because it's a different relative document root. So that's where public path comes in. So we will stop that, and we will add a public path. Now, public path, what it tells you, the public path is what it actually puts in the URL in the browser. So here, we know that the toolbar is located down here. And therefore, if we go up one level, and then up another level to build, and then down into UI assets and down into here, we will have an accurate public path. So if we come and look and see how that manifests, we can see that the path that it created here traverses correctly. Now, in the past, we used to just put /build/UI-assets. And that's very crude, because then you would never be able to deploy into a random subdirectory. You would only be able to deploy at the root. But there's a problem with this. And the problem is, what if you have some components that are at a different relative path than what we've specified here? Here we've specified up 2 directories, so from toolbar up 2 directories and then down. What if we had something in a subdirectory? So that is where this sort of unusual webpack public path variable comes in. This is a way to dynamically set the public path at runtime. And it is a little bit tricky. So I have rigged up the toolbar here. And I am going to import this public path. Now, it's very important that this override variable is the first thing that runs. And if you're using ES6 modules, these imports, even if I put code up here, some global code, var blah, that code doesn't actually run first. the ES6 modules will import everything first and then run this blah. So the only way to ensure that it runs first is to actually import that code. And if we look inside this public path, we can see that we've got a public path variable. Now, I can set this to anything I want. And I'm going to come back here and disrupt that just to give you a sense for how that public path variable works. So we will start this now. And now I'm compiling that code into toolbar.tsx. So there's a new toolbar.tsx that dynamically sets the path. Now we see they're broken again. And if we go in and we examine the result, we're going to see some blah there. There it is. Blah / UI assets / file loader / font finance.ttf. So it took the webpack public path and it appended the output path, right? So a little bit tricky here. But that does give you the ability to set your path correctly. So for instance, we could do the exact same thing in here that we did in the file. We could say .sot / and then it would append this to it, and we get that exact same path. All right, so now let's get super tricky. What happens if I set, unfortunately, if I set the public path in the config file, that overrides the dynamic variable. In order to get the dynamic variable to override the config, you actually need this post-transform public path function. So what this does is it takes the public path that file loader generates, the final one, and then it passes that to you as a variable, which you can then access your webpack public path at runtime and do something with it. You could do complex transforms. But what we're going to do here is say the most common thing we're going to want is that we're down an extra level. And so what's going to happen here is it's going to take the value of this .. and it's going to prepend it to whatever we come up with. We're going to show you how that works. There we go. It's broken again, which is what we would expect. And if we come in here and look at the style, open the right one or open the wrong? Go. We can see that we have an extra ... and that's why it fails. But if we were down one directory, that's exactly what we would want to do. So for Finsemble, for all of our presentation components, they're all at the right level. So this is going to work correctly. But if we ever do need to create something at a lower level, we can use this public path recipe and transform the application.